Welcome to Verge File.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I don't need a man." Then passed me the rent notice. That night stuck like a shard in my chest. Not because of what she said, but when and how she said it. We were at Tyler's birthday. Packed rooftop bar, skyline behind us. Laughter, drinks, selfies. Madison stood beside me, holding her cocktail like it was a microphone and attention was oxygen. She laughed too loud, brushed Tyler's arm too often, and then she said it, loud enough for the circle to hear. "I don't need a man to survive," she tossed casually, eyes scanning the group. "I just like having someone convenient." Someone snorted. Someone else sipped in silence. Tyler raised an eyebrow. And me? I stood still, like a cutout. Inside, something snapped quietly. I didn't respond. I didn't make a scene. I just shut off. That was the first silence. I drove her home. She didn't notice my shift. Just scrolled Instagram, posted a photo with the caption, "Independent. Always." She tagged me. 2 days later, she asked if I could cover her car insurance again. Her card got hacked. Of course. I nodded. And that night, I started watching. Not her. Myself. I reviewed every moment I said, yes, when I meant not this time. Every rent split. Every Uber she ordered on my card, just for now. The groceries. Her Spotify. Her pet's vet bill. She didn't need a man. She just needed one when it was cold outside and her phone bill was due. She was never cruel. Just comfortably indifferent. That's what hurt more. And I wasn't mad. Not yet. Not even disappointed. I was observing. Quietly. Deeply. Then Tyler texted me by accident. Or maybe it wasn't an accident. "Yo, she's wild. You really let her say that?" No context. No name. Just the implication. I didn't respond. Just stared at the screen. I didn't ask Madison anything. I didn't scroll through her messages. I didn't accuse. I cooked dinner. Folded her laundry. Paid the Wi-Fi. But inside, something was shifting. A silent rotation of gravity. She thought I was still orbiting. And then came the Tuesday that changed it all. She left her laptop open. She never does that. I wasn't snooping. It was just there. A tab was open. Google Docs. A journal entry. "Alex is dependable. Predictable. I love him, I think, but I don't feel excited anymore. He's just there. Like background noise. Safe, stable, unremarkable." I didn't scroll further. I closed the lid. That night, I kissed her on the forehead and said, "Sleep well." She smiled, rolled over, and I lay awake, not hurt, just gone. I didn't confront, didn't slam doors. I just planned, because now I wasn't in the game. I was preparing to walk out of the stadium entirely, not to hurt her, to take back everything I gave, and vanish, without a storm, without a goodbye, just a silence so deep it would echo. The first strike didn't make a sound. It started when I stopped responding right away. Not in a dramatic way, just a little slower. I let messages sit unread. I'd leave the apartment before she woke up. Came home just a bit later than usual. She didn't notice. That was the first sign she never really looked. Then came Tyler again. I ran into him outside her building one evening. He was leaning on his car, waiting, holding 2 coffees. He flinched when he saw me. "Just dropping this off," he said, holding up the cup like it was proof of innocence. She said she had a long day. I nodded, not speaking, not frowning, just watching. He shifted, uncomfortable, and added, "She's cool, man. But I wouldn't get too comfortable." He smiled like that made it better. I walked past him, didn't say a word. Just went inside and took inventory. Of my bank account, my calendar, my passwords, my digital keys. I started moving files, backing up documents, scanning receipts. I didn't know what I'd need yet, but I knew what I wouldn't leave behind. I pulled up the spreadsheet she never saw, the one where I'd tracked my spending since last October. Every "can you grab this?" Every "I'll pay you back." She hadn't. Ever. And I wasn't angry. Still not. I was awake. That weekend, her friend Ashley came over. They laughed loudly in the kitchen while I worked in the spare room. My name came up. "He's so good to you," Ashley said. "You've got it made." Madison replied, "He's just nice. You know? Safe." But safe gets boring. Ashley asked something I couldn't hear. Then Madison whispered, "Sometimes I wish he'd just mess up, so I'd have a reason." That line didn't sting. It sharpened me. She was waiting for me to fail so she could feel justified walking away. But I wasn't going to fail. I was going to vanish, without ever being the villain. I started withdrawing slowly. First, I canceled the shared Netflix. Then the grocery delivery account. Then the Spotify duo. I didn't mention it. Let her texts come in confused. I replied late. Something's wrong with the card, I said once. She never checked further. And then I stopped filling the gas in her car. She noticed that one. You forgot to fill up, she said. Can you take it later? I just looked at her and said, I thought you didn't need a man. It landed. Not like a slap. Like a cold window left open in winter. She blinked, confused. Then laughed like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the first real crack. Tyler texted again. She said you're being distant. Playing games now? I didn't respond. I just watched the message stay blue and unanswered. It was never a game. It was an exit plan disguised as silence. No revenge. No chaos. Just subtraction. Every time she leaned in, I stepped 1 inch further out. No alarms. No accusations. Only the quiet collapse of something she thought would always be there. By the time she noticed, the door would already be closing. Proof isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's in the silence between actions. In things not said. I started watching, not like a detective, more like a man cataloging the truth he already knew. The bank app showed a recurring Venmo payment labeled freelance edit. It wasn't mine. The amount? Same as what I'd transfer to Madison weekly, just in case she needed anything. Another name. A guy I'd never heard of. I clicked the name. His profile was public. I saw photos. The beach trip I didn't know she took. The same swimsuit I paid for. I didn't react. Didn't message him. Didn't ask questions. I just screen capped everything. That week, I noticed a second Uber account tied to my card. Not her name, not mine, an alias. She'd created a second profile to avoid notifications. It had rides to and from places I didn't recognize. At hours I didn't question before. But now I saw patterns. Midweek, midnight, one drop-off near Tyler's apartment. One pickup 2 hours later. 2 weeks in a row. I kept collecting. Quietly. One night, she left her Apple Watch charging in the kitchen. I was doing dishes when it lit up. A text. He's still clueless. Or maybe he just doesn't care. It wasn't from Tyler. A different name. R. I recognized it. A guy she used to say was just a friend from college. The message sat there, blinking, waiting for a reply that never came. At least not while I was there. I took a picture. Then I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "You've been distant lately. Are you okay?" I smiled and said, "Just tired." She nodded and went back to scrolling, probably looking for her next dopamine hit. She didn't know I was documenting her digital trail like an archaeologist of a love already buried. I printed everything. A folder with screenshots, dates, transactions, names, places, a private archive of quiet betrayals. But I wasn't collecting to confront. I was collecting so I'd never doubt myself again. Because when I leave, there will be no voice in my head asking, was it really that bad? I'll know. I started looking at apartments. Not to move in, just to see how free life could look. I unsubscribed from our shared calendar, canceled upcoming dinner reservations, deleted saved anniversaries from my phone. Every day, one more string cut. Quiet. Surgical. She didn't notice. She thought I was still orbiting her. Still the man who'd take the hit, pay the bill, swallow the disrespect. But that man was dissolving. Fast. The transformation had started. And she had no idea she was already being left, just not in the way she expected. Not through anger. Not through a fight. Through silence. Documentation. Precision. The most dangerous man isn't the one who yells. It's the one who watches, learns, and moves when no one's looking. Disappearing doesn't start with packing a bag. It starts with detachment. Emotionally first, physically second. Then, everything else follows like dominoes. I woke up at 4 a.m. one Thursday. Watched her sleeping next to me, perfectly still, curled under a blanket I bought. In a bed I assembled. In an apartment I funded. She never once asked how I slept. That morning, I turned off Find My iPhone. Canceled the cloud sharing. Logged out of every shared app. I pulled cash. Enough to float me for a few weeks without digital footprints. Then I booked a work trip that didn't exist. 3 days. Out of town. I told her I'd have bad service, long hours, early mornings. She smiled and said, "Okay, have fun." Didn't ask where. Didn't ask when I'd be back. That was the confirmation I didn't know I needed. She didn't see the withdrawal because she never checked in. My presence had become an assumption, a utility, invisible until it breaks. So I broke. I left quietly that Friday morning. No note, no text, just absence. Phone off. Bank alerts disabled. Every trace of me, muted. By noon, she'd called once. By 3 o'clock, for times. Then the text started. "Hey, are you okay? Why aren't you answering? I thought you said this was a work trip." I watched the messages roll in on my backup phone. Didn't open any. Just observed. Day 2, she called my boss. He played along. Said I was off-grid for a retreat. She panicked. Drove by my office. Called my sister. They both knew to say nothing. By evening, her text shifted from concerned to irritated. "This isn't funny. If this is some kind of guilt trip, grow up." It wasn't guilt. It was clarity. I checked the camera at the apartment. She paced for hours. Left. Came back. Checked my drawer. Searched the bathroom. Opened the closet. Sat on the floor. I wasn't gone. I was just done. This wasn't a tantrum. It was a tactic. I wanted her to feel absence like a cold draft. Not with drama, but with the terrifying realization that silence is louder than words. On the 3rd day, she posted a photo. A mirror selfie. Caption said, "Self-care weekend." Her eyes said otherwise. No Tyler in sight. No late-night rides. Just isolation. And tension she didn't know how to mask. I stayed away for 5 full days. When I returned, it was a weekday afternoon. She wasn't home. I walked in like I'd never left. Grabbed my essentials. A few clothes. My documents. My hard drive. A wristwatch I hadn't worn in a year. Then I left again. She called later that night. I answered. She said, "Why are you acting like this?" I replied, "Acting like what?" There was a long pause. Then she said, "Like you don't care." I didn't say a word. Just let the silence grow long enough to echo. That's when she realized. This wasn't punishment. It was departure. Not to provoke, but to preserve. You don't scream in a storm. You walk out before it hits. And I had already stepped into sunlight. Some men explode. Others erase. I chose the latter. Tyler thought he was untouched. Thought I'd vanished quietly, leaving him in the clear. He never realized I'd left with receipts. Literal ones. See, Tyler worked in finance. His entire online identity was polished, shirts always crisp, captions always calculated. But real people always leave fingerprints. Even the cleanest ones. And Tyler? He wasn't clean. I remembered a night 6 months back. Madison casually mentioned his side hustle. Said he helped people move money. I thought she meant taxes. She didn't. So I followed the thread. His LinkedIn had connections to a payment processor flagged in a federal report 2 years ago. Nothing illegal. Yet. But suspicious enough to raise eyebrows in the right inbox. Then I found his name on a real estate deed. Property in a woman's name who'd filed for bankruptcy last year. And a shared Venmo history that didn't make sense for someone in finance. None of this would make him guilty in court. But in the court of public perception, it would be enough. I gathered screenshots. Cross-referenced dates. Compiled a folder that looked just professional enough to be dangerous. Just messy enough to raise doubt. Then I created a burner email. No threats. No accusations. Just subject line. You might want to review these discrepancies. I sent it to his firm's compliance officer. From an IP routed through a VPN, logged at a cafe where I paid in cash. By the time I finished my coffee, the message was sent, the account deleted, the trail gone. I wasn't aiming to ruin him. Just to remind him that shadows watch, too. The fallout started quietly. A LinkedIn update gone. A story removed. 2 weeks later, Madison mentioned he was acting weird lately and had ghosted her a bit. I nodded. I never said his name. This wasn't revenge. It was redirection. Let them chase each other in circles. Let them wonder which bridge caught fire while they were still dancing on it. Meanwhile, I focused on my exit. I removed my name from the lease. Shifted my paycheck to a new bank. Packed what I wanted and sold what I didn't. My storage unit was paid up for 6 months. Key hidden in a place no one would check. Madison texted late one night. "I miss you when you're like this. Distant. Cold." I didn't reply. She didn't understand. This wasn't distance. It was absence in progress. And as for Tyler, his silence was the proof. He never confronted me, never reached out. He knew. He understood something had moved behind the curtain. Not loud, not messy, just exact. Madison noticed something too. She started asking questions I'd been waiting for. Are we okay? Do you even want to fix this? I gave her neutral answers. Vague nods. We'll talk soon. But we wouldn't. There was nothing left to say. The collapse had begun, not through confrontation, but through quiet subtraction. Piece by piece, without leaving fingerprints. Not everything ends with a bang. Some stories just stop showing up. The most painful kind of isolation isn't physical. It's social. It's when people stop defending you. When they shift their tone. When the group chat goes quiet and no one says why. That's where she was now. It started small. A dinner party at her friend Ashley's place. I wasn't invited, not directly, but I showed up anyway. Not for her. For the optics. I walked in calmly, dressed well, said hello to everyone but her. She blinked like I wasn't real. Ashley smiled awkwardly. Hey, wasn't sure you were coming. I nodded. Thought I'd drop by. I didn't stay long. Just enough to leave a mark. Just enough to remind everyone I still existed, and that I was just fine. Madison hovered near the drinks, too loud again, laughing at stories that didn't land. Her eyes darted across the room, waiting for mine to meet hers. They didn't. And that's when it started. People noticed. I heard someone ask, wait, are they still together? Another whispered, something's off. I left without saying goodbye. Let the silence do the talking. A few days later, I bumped into her coworker at a cafe. Small talk turned to deeper talk. I don't mean to pry, she said, but Madison hasn't really been herself lately. Is everything okay? I shrugged. Neutral. Sometimes people show you who they are when they think you'll never leave. That was all I said. I didn't smear her. Didn't accuse. But I left the door open just wide enough for doubt to creep in. That's how you shift perception. Not by force, by quiet contrast. She started texting me more. Longer messages. Explaining things I hadn't asked about. Making excuses I hadn't required. Her tone changed from cold to cautious. She felt the ground shift under her. Then the group chat changed. She told me, Ashley's been weird lately. I didn't reply. A week later, she wasn't invited to a mutual friend's birthday. I was. I didn't go, but I made sure to send flowers, with my name on the card. Let her wonder what was said about her behind closed doors. Let her feel what I had felt. Presence being replaced with absence, and no one reaching out to explain why. It wasn't about revenge. It was about perspective. She had built a story in her head where I was passive, forgettable, easily replaced. But now, she was the one being slowly, politely edited out of the picture. Her social standing wasn't shattered overnight. It was eroded. One missed call. One unanswered invitation. One awkward silence at a party she used to command. She once laughed in front of people at my expense. Now, no one was laughing with her. And still, I said nothing. I just watched. From the edge of the frame, not angry, not broken. Just free. There's a kind of silence that wraps around you like a vacuum. Not because no one's talking, but because no one's listening anymore. That's where she was now. The messages kept coming. Long ones. Rambling ones. Emotional ones. At first, they were still laced with pride. Then they shifted, apologies without admitting fault, questions without waiting for answers. I didn't block her. That would have been too loud. I left her on read. Left her wondering what I'd seen, what I knew, what I thought. She didn't know which version of herself I was responding to, if I was responding at all. And the truth is, I wasn't. I had stopped speaking. I was still nearby, technically. Still in the same city. Still logged into a few old apps she hadn't noticed. But I was gone in every way that mattered. She wasn't sure if we were still together. But she also knew asking would confirm the answer she feared. She tried to pull me back the way she always had. Casual texts, selfies, fake nostalgia. None of it landed. Eventually, I saw her outside a cafe I used to visit. She was with someone new, laughing, performing. But the laughter ended when her eyes met mine through the glass. I didn't look away. I didn't nod. Just held the eye contact for 2 seconds too long, then returned to my coffee. That silence, the one where someone sees you and knows they no longer exist in your world, that's the deepest kind. That's when she started to break. The next week, she called my sister again. then my coworker, then even my landlord. All of them had been briefed in advance. They offered nothing, just polite boundaries. Her Instagram changed. No more group shots. No more girls' nights. No more selfies at Tyler's apartment. The attention dried up. The validation ran out. Now, it was just her and her own thoughts. I'd stopped participating, and without me, her storyline lost its script. One night, she showed up at my door. I didn't answer. She knocked once, then again. I could hear her breathing on the other side, hesitating. Finally, she said, "I just want to talk." I said nothing. She waited, then walked away. I watched from behind the curtain, not with satisfaction, with clarity. She wasn't the villain. I wasn't the victim. We were just no longer anything at all. And for someone who had controlled every narrative, every room, every dynamic, being met with complete emotional unavailability was the one thing she couldn't control. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't pettiness. It was a locked door she no longer had the key to. And now, everyone she used to stand on for support had slowly stepped back. No confrontation. No announcements. Just quiet disconnection. One person at a time. Until it was only her, left alone with a version of herself that no longer worked. Meanwhile, I wasn't watching her fall. I was just watching myself rise. The thing about silence is that it doesn't last forever. Eventually, the person on the other end demands noise. Something, anything, to fill the space you left behind. And so she came back. Not digitally this time. In person. I was leaving the gym when she appeared at the door, waiting. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, trying to read me. I gave her nothing. Her first words were cautious. Not angry, not accusatory. Just tired. I don't get it. What did I do that was so bad? That's the question they always ask. Not out of innocence, but because they never expected consequences. I didn't rush my answer. I let her stand there, reaching for something to hold on to. Then I finally said, "You treated me like I'd always be there. So I left." She blinked. Like she wasn't expecting it to be that simple. It always is. She started pacing, throwing out pieces of logic. Excuses shaped like explanations. Lines like, "I was going through a lot. You never said you had a problem. I didn't think it was that serious." Each one fell flat. Not because she wasn't emotional, but because I wasn't. I wasn't feeding the fire. I wasn't fueling the performance. And without resistance, there's no scene to play out. She finally stopped and asked, "So that's it?" I nodded. It's been it. That hit her harder than any accusation ever could. She looked around like someone expecting the audience to clap. There was no audience. Just me. Just truth. She stepped closer. A little too close. "I want to fix this," she said. But I didn't. I'd already fixed the part of me that stayed too long. I stepped back. Calm. Firm. There's nothing left to fix. She didn't cry. Not right then. But I could see the panic rising. Because people like her, they're not used to silence. They're used to explosions, arguments, closure with drama. But I'd already closed the book. Quietly. Months ago. Now I was just returning the last page. She stood still for a while, like she didn't know whether to fight or walk away. I didn't help her decide. That was hers to sit with. She finally said, "You changed." And I replied, "No. I just stopped hiding who I really was." She left. Not with a slam, not with a breakdown. Just with nothing. And that was the final blow. The realization that she couldn't even inspire a reaction from the man who used to say yes to everything. She didn't lose me in a moment. She lost me in 1,000 small cuts, none of which she noticed until the bleeding started. And now? Now I was a shadow in her life. Not loud, not bitter, just absent, emotionally disconnected, fully intact. That was the confrontation she came for. And the silence I gave her would echo longer than any fight ever could. You don't always hear collapse. Sometimes it's a slow settling of dust. Quiet. Final. Inescapable. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from her. Then, without warning, she reappeared. This time through others. Ashley reached out first. Madison hasn't been herself. I think she's spiraling. I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because caring no longer meant returning. Then Tyler messaged me. A single sentence, "She's burning bridges." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The version of her that once laughed loudest in every room now barely spoke. The energy she once fed off, attention, admiration, control, was gone. Not stolen. Not taken. Just retracted. Even those who once backed her began to detach. Not because of a scandal, but because she stopped being useful, interesting, appealing. She had built her identity around being chosen, wanted, adored. But when none of that came anymore, she unraveled. No one wants to stay near someone who can't admit they lost. I heard she quit her job. Something about a toxic environment. I heard she moved apartments. Downsized. Cheaper place. No more balcony photos. No new furniture hauls. Her stories went dark. Then deleted. Our old mutuals stopped mentioning her altogether. As if saying her name pulled weight they no longer wanted to carry. She reached out one last time. The message was different now. I'm sorry. I see it now. You were always steady. I thought you'd never leave. I thought I had time to fix it. I read it once. Then archived it. That was my answer. Not to be cruel, but because I had no more words left to give. Her collapse wasn't about losing me. It was about realizing she had mistaken silence for weakness, support for submission, loyalty for lack of options. Now she was alone in a space she once controlled, unable to influence the narrative, unable to draw sympathy, unable to pull anyone back in. The audience had left the room. I'd become something more powerful than an ex. I became the absence that rewrote how she saw herself. Not by hurting her, by no longer saving her. You can't play the victim in a story where the other person just walks away. And that's exactly what I'd done. Walked away. No rage. No pettiness. No need to prove a point. I wasn't part of the collapse. I had simply stepped back and let gravity finish the work. She stood in the ruins alone. And for the first time, no one came to help her up. The last moment didn't look like a breakup. It looked like a pause. A quiet evening downtown. I was walking back from a client meeting, calm, clean-headed. No expectations. I hadn't thought about her in days. Maybe weeks. Then I saw her. She was sitting outside a small cafe. Alone. Hair pulled back. No makeup. Eyes tired in a way filters couldn't fix. She didn't see me at first. But I stopped walking. Just for a second. Just long enough to observe. She glanced up. Froze. That split second, it held everything. Recognition. Regret. The kind of heartbreak that doesn't show up in screams, but in stillness. She stood slowly, as if unsure whether to approach. I didn't move. She walked forward, hesitant, like someone trying to touch a version of the past that no longer exists. When she finally reached me, she didn't say hi. She whispered, "You look different." I didn't respond right away, just studied her face. It looked older, not aged, just stripped of illusion. She waited for me to say something that would give her a way back in. But there was no way. Not anymore. Because I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't anything she could use. I was done. She asked, was I really that bad? I took a breath, then said, no, you were just exactly who you were. I just stopped pretending it was enough. She nodded, barely, then said, I miss who we were. I shook my head. We were never a we. I just hadn't figured that out yet. Her eyes watered, but she didn't cry. That moment had passed. Too much time. Too many truths unspoken until they became irreversible. I started to walk past her. She grabbed my wrist, not tight, just enough to be felt. Will I ever see you again? She asked. I looked at her, clear and still. And I said, you won't have to. I'm already everywhere you feel the silence. Then I pulled away, gently. No scene. No final speech. No lingering. Just one clean step into the life I'd already started building without her. The moment didn't need music. It didn't need anger or grief. It needed one thing. Closure that didn't ask for permission. Some stories end with explosions. Ours ended with absence. And sometimes, that echo is louder than anything else. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.